Very good morning to everyone who has joined us today for this session. I'm Anurag, the core of our Connect team. So we are back with yet another webinar session today. The speaker for today's session is Mr. Srinjoy Ganguly, who's the founder and CEO of Adroitera, which is an edtech firm. He's an IBM Qiskit advocate and educator and trainer. He possesses masters in quantum computing, machine learning, deep learning, and AI. He's teaching and training students, industry professionals, and business professionals for over 5 years now. He has led, mentored, and taught quantum machine learning, study space at Q Research, Q World, and authored a book on quantum computing with self programming. He has conducted faculty development training at IIIT Pune by special invitation and gave expert talks on quantum machine learning at IEEE Signal Processing Society and has conducted several webinars at various institutes related to quantum machine learning and quantum computing. He has been appointed and invited by Woxon University as a visiting professor to teach quantum computing to MBA students. His research interests include quantum machine learning, quantum natural language processing, a graphical calculus for quantum computing, and quantum image processing. Now, I would like to request Srinjoy for take over this session and thank you for joining us today for this session. So over to you, Srinjoy.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for the kind introduction. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here, and I'm so humbled that you invited me. And this is my very first webinar on QNLP. So let's see how it goes. And if you all are unable to understand, not understand like something, so that's perfectly fine. I will also be providing some resources, some papers which are very nice introduction to this topic. And this is also a very new topic. It's it's like I would say very new topic rather, which saw development in the span of 2020 to 2021. And more developments are supposed to happen, and maybe you all can contribute to this. So let's get started.
Yeah, sure.
So is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. It's visible, right?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's get started. QNLP with Lambec Toolkit. So if you are familiar, just few days back on 13th of this month, Lambec Toolkit was launched by Cambridge Quantum, which is a full QNLP toolkit. And this is like, the world's first toolkit to perform QNLP experiments. As of now, very basic experiments are there, but they just provide you a background, an intuition that indeed even quantum NLP can be performed on quantum hardware and quantum simulators. And in the end of this session, I will show you a very short demo. It is also from the Lambec documentation about running a small classification model on QNLP simulator. So I have already ran the code to save some time, and that's like, I will show you towards the end. So this is the agenda for the talk. We will start with some basic intro to quantum computing. Then we will see some very basic intro of machine learning, which is required to understand QML, quantum machine learning. Then we will see briefly about two or three applications of QML and quantum computing as well in general. And then I will introduce you the QNLP. I will explain the Lambec toolkit briefly, how it works and what are the processes involved, because those processes are the ones which are actually followed in the code. So if you know that theory, so it becomes very easy to carry forward. And then I will provide you a small Lambec demo, and I will provide you some topics for research in quantum computing. They are mixed, like quantum hardware plus quantum software. But of course, they are not a comprehensive list. It's only one slide, but you will get the idea how you can conduct research in this field and what are the topics which which requires more and more research and filling the critical gaps. Okay, so I will start with classical versus quantum because it becomes easy to understand. So as you all know, classical computing is based on classical mechanics, the Newtonian mechanics, and quantum computing is based on quantum mechanical principles. So quantum computing is basically that field which utilizes the weirdness of quantum mechanics to perform calculations. So it's a mix of mathematics, computer science, mostly computer science, I would say, because it's computing. In classical, we use the classical bit 0 and 1. So as you all are familiar, voltage 0, voltage 1, that means off and on. But in quantum computing, what you can do is that you can have quantum states, which we call quantum bits. Quantum bits are two-level quantum systems, and two-level means 0 and 1. But not only it can represent 0 and 1, but it can also represent a linear combination of zeros and ones. So that is what we call as superposition. So superposition is nothing but a linear combination of these quantum bits. And we represent them by this Dirac notation. This is called the Dirac notation, which is called Ket0, Ket1. The hardware for classical computing is composed of CMOS circuits, which is present in our laptops, computers, mobiles, etc., monitors, TV, like all those electronic devices. And the hardware for quantum computing varies. And this is also a research exploration question, like what is a particular hardware which will be good for everything. So my opinion will be there are several hardware currently, and maybe in near future we might have all these hardware still, and we might use them for specific applications. For example, D waves, D waves quantum computer is very good for optimization problems and so on. So maybe superconducting and photonics will be used for more universal problems, maybe quantum finance or quantum chemistry simulation and like that. So quantum computing hardware varies, but yeah, that's not a problem. So all these hardware can be can be application specific in the near term. And classical computers, of course, consist of CPUs, which processes in sequential manner. So A comes in, then B comes in, then only C comes in, not in parallel, like A, B, C all come in together. That happens in GPUs and quantum computers. All the processing is inherently parallel. But the difference between GPU and quantum computer is huge, because GPUs is like it's like a customized parallel architecture which you manufacture, but quantum computers are inherently parallel, so you don't have to manufacture it explicitly parallel. It is inherently parallel by nature, and it becomes parallel because of this property of superposition. So these are the three properties which we are going to see now. First is superposition, which I already told you, which is a linear combination of quantum states. So, and you can intuitively guess this, that if you have this linear combination of quantum states, then you can actually process lot of qubits in parallel. That means together or simultaneously, in other words. So that is what happens in superposition. If there are 2 to the power n states, where n is the number of qubits, all qubits can be together or in linear combination. And this is the Bloch sphere, which is shown here. This represents a single qubit. That means the two-level quantum system. And it shows you also, the zero state, the Ket0 state, the Ket1 state. So you can say that Ket0 is the lower energy level, Ket1 is the excited level or the higher energy level. But other states also are possible. Those are also the other basis states which you can make. So for example, plus state is a superposition state, which is Ket0 plus Ket1 normalized. That means divide by √2. And similarly, you have minus, which is in the diagonal axis. So if you can see my cursor, this is the minus. It will be Ket0 minus Ket1 divided by √2. Similarly, you have Ket0 plus I Ket1 divided by √2, and here ket 0 minus I times ket 1. So this is a basically complex. The amplitude associated with the quantum states is complex because uh, we consider quantum computing in the domain of Hilbert spaces, which are complex vector spaces. So that's why we also have these complex elements I and minus I, ket minus I. So this is a simple representation how you can represent a qubit in a block sphere. Then we have the property of interference, and interference, as you all have already studied this in high school, Young's double slit experiment, where we used to have a beam of photons or electrons, and we used to have a narrow slit, and they used to pass through the slit and make some patterns. So on a white screen, at some parts of the screen, the light was, if you are considering photons, the light was bright because of constructive interference, and in some parts of the screen, the light was low because of destructive interference. So where the phases match each other, that was constructive. Where the phases were nullifying each other, that was destructive. And this kind of interference actually helps you to have some quantum states having high probability of measurement. And this special technique, this interference, is used in Grover's search algorithm. It is an algorithm which is used for performing unstructured search on a database. And for example, like you have unstructured database, which is not organized in any ascending or descending order, but it is rather um, unstructured. It's not organized, but you want to find an element. So Grover search algorithm actually gives you a nice quantum speed up compared to classical computers to find that particular element with the help of interference principle. It provides you a high probability of measurement for that particular item which you are trying to search in that database. Next, what you have is entanglement. This is very important. Rather, this is very natural inherent characteristic of quantum quantum mechanics, which is entanglement. That means even if your qubits or quantum states are very far apart, still they are very strongly correlated by a distance. And this is used in several experiments of quantum teleportation and super dense coding, where scientists have teleported quantum states which can be present few thousand kilometers away at the same time. And yeah, this is one of the principal properties of quantum computing. And what I define quantum computers are, and maybe you can also imagine this, that quantum computers are a big GPU because they also execute tasks in parallel, but it's a big GPU with these three special properties: superposition, interference, and entanglement. So it's a GPU with all these properties. It's a GPU which is inherently parallel, but it's a GPU which also has two more properties: interference and entanglement. But of course, it's not a GPU, but to gather an intuition what is actually a quantum computer. So you can imagine like this, that it's a GPU, it's parallel, but it has two more special properties. It can entangle and it can interfere. So I just want to give you just a brief slide on the quantum logic gates. So basically, we represent these logic gates using matrices, and that's why, like, before you dive into the field of quantum computing, if you have a nice background on linear algebra, it helps a lot. Most of the computations, and of course, I'm talking about digital quantum computers. The thing which we are discussing now is all digital because zero and ones are present, and not there are also analog quantum computers which are continuous, but I am talking about the discrete model, as that's used mostly in most of the research. But of course there are also research in the continuous domain as well. And these are some of the basic gates. So for example, Hadamard gate is actually used to create superposition. And similar to, classical logic gates, we have this X gate, which is like the NOT gate. And Z gate is it multiplies a -1 to the to the state, to the higher excited state, that means ket1 state. And y is for, like, again it's like the same operation as x gate, the not gate, but instead of a normal real value, it just multiplies a complex amplitude in the quantum states and also flips the qubit. So if you have a qubit in ket0, it will become ket1 after passing through x gate, and so on. And these are some of the 2 qubit gates. Those were single qubit gates. These are 2 qubit gates and their respective matrix representation. So we have the control NOT gate. So this C NOT gate, and if you have a Hadamard gate, these two combination can give you an entangled state, which is known as the Bell state. And in the QNLP slide, actually, I'm going to show you the diagrammatic representation of a Bell state. And with the Hadamard and C naught, of course, you get a Bell state. Then you have a swap gate, which is like swapping the qubits. So if first qubit, second qubit, they ket0, ket1, then they get swapped and it becomes ket1, ket0. Again, you have these controlled Z similar to controlled NOT. So controlled operations are very simple to construct, because you have the single qubit gates and you just put them onto the second qubit and put a control wire through them. So for example, just as you have controlled NOT, that means controlled X, you can similarly have controlled Y, controlled Z, and also controlled Hadamard, and there are several other gates as well, which you can have. For example, the S gate. S gate is more, S gate is also in the domain of the phase gate. So also Z gate is also, because they mostly deal with the, they like, multiply an amplitude into the excited state. So they change the phase of that particular state. That is why they are also known as the phase gate. And we have at the end the Toffoli gate. This is one of the 3 qubit gates where you have these lines. So these lines basically represent the qubits, and where you have these 3 qubits, and its working is like whenever these states will be in one, then only this state will get triggered. And basically for all of these controlled operation, it's the same kind of working. Whenever the first qubit is in one, then only the second qubit will get triggered. That means it will it will get activated. So for example, if here was ket0 and here is ket1, so this is activated. So since the control is activated, the black dot is control, it's activated. So therefore the target, the second qubit, will get activated, and the ket0 here will get transformed to ket1, and here nothing happens, the ket1 remains ket1. So similar to that, here also if we have two ket1s, and for example here we have ket1 again, so all are ket1s, the output state will be ket1, ket1, and ket0, because these two controls were activated. That's why this will get triggered. The target qubit will get triggered, and that's why the value will change. And depending upon the operation, that operation will be applied. Here it is a X gate, it's a NOT operation. If you have a Z gate, then you will have some different operation, you will get the -1. So these are the basic quantum logic gates which can be used to construct basic quantum circuits and quantum algorithms as well. Now we proceed to some basics of machine learning. So I'm not going to cover machine learning fully. It's already a broad field. I am just going to give you a very small introduction of neural networks, because the analogy of neural networks makes a lot of sense in quantum machine learning. So this is machine learning. This slide describes you the various applications of machine learning which you might be already familiar with. And supervised learning, basically it is about labels. You have labels, the labels act as teachers. It tells the data that this is correct, this is not correct, and something like that. So for example, if you have images of cats and dogs, so the label associated with the cat image will be cat, and the label associated with the dog image will be dog, and so on. You can have elephant image also, and so on. And you can represent those labels numerically. So maybe cat is 0, dog is 1, and so on. So that's supervised learning. And in unsupervised learning, as the name suggests, you do not have any labels, and you are it's like you are on your own. So like that the machine learning algorithm tries to learn on its own the various features from the data. So for example, you have provided an image of a dog, and it tries to learn what can be the features of the dog's face and so on. Similarly for cats, and then they can be used to classify whether it's a dog or cat image without the labels. And reinforcement learning is a different phenomena. Reinforcement learning is more about, like, if you have an agent, it's more about the interaction with an environment and then maximizing a particular reward value. So for example, if you have an agent and it's navigating a path, and there are obstacles in the path, so if whenever the agent lands into an obstacle, you can deduct some reward. So maybe you can award that agent a -1 point, and whenever it gets past an obstacle, you can award them a +2 point and something like that. So that's reinforcement learning, and that is used for, like, games, AI, and of course robot navigation is the example which I gave you, then learning tasks and so on. There are various machine learning algorithms, supervised, unsupervised, we saw. And then there are also continuous and categorical, depending on the output which you want. So for example, I gave you the example of categorical, where the output value is discrete, that means 0, 1, 2. So for example, 0 is cat, 1 is dog. But also you can have the continuous values, for example linear regression problem, for predicting some kind of value. So if you have, for example, a very simple case is house price detection. So if you have house prices, and there are several criteria, maybe the size of the house and the location of the house and so on. Based on that, you would like to predict the price. So the price is a continuous variable which can vary. So it's like a real number, not like a discrete 0 or 1. And those also you can like do using linear regression, a polynomial regression. You also have the decision tree, random forest, and neural network regression as well. But you can see there's all those same algorithms can also be used for classification as well. So so predicting continuous values is regression program, and predicting categorical values is the classification problem. And now we focus specifically on neural networks, because neural networks is something, it's a part of deep learning. But the quantum machine learning algorithm, the variational circuits which we are going to talk about next, that is actually inspired from classical neural networks, in the sense that the green dots are inputs. So similarly in the QML also, you will see there will be inputs, and then you have these weights. So there are weights applied to these arrows, so these are weighted, and a linear combination is performed on all of these dots in the middle layer. In the hidden layer, a linear combination is performed. That means the weight values are multiplied with the input values, and they are or added together. And these weight values are variable. These weight values are something which are modified according to the algorithm. So it trains and it modifies itself to converge to a particular value which provides you the maximum accuracy at the output. So for example, if we have an image of dog, then its parameters will be changing. Of course, here is also a set of weights. So let's say here you have the W1 set of weights, and here you have W2, or maybe theta1, theta2. And these theta1, theta2 can be optimized using any basic gradient optimization technique. And after optimization, they converge to a certain value to maximize the accuracy. So you provided a dog image, and it should predict the label 1, assuming that the dog has label 1. And if you provide a cat image, it should produce the label 0, assuming that the cat has a 0 as its label. So this is the model of a simple neural network, and this is how the quantum machine learning is also analogous, as in inspired from. So in the quantum machine learning domain, we have these four kinds. First is the classical data classical algorithm, which we all are familiar with. So classical algorithm means the type of hardware on which it runs. So we are already doing this. We are running classical data on classical computers, but we would like to now focus on classical data because we have a lot of classical data on quantum hardware. So that means we need some kind of algorithm inspired from classical machine learning algorithms to perform quantum machine learning. So quantum machine learning is closely inspired from classical neural network or classical ML. So how it is inspired? It's inspired by the use of variational circuits. So as I told you, those parameters theta 1, theta 2 are variable. So similarly, we use variational circuit, that means parameterized quantum gates. The gates which I have shown you, those are non-parameterized, they are fixed. But here we have some parameterized gate Rx. So x-axis is in the block sphere. So here these axis x, y, these are around the block sphere which I have shown you before in this slide. So you can see that there can be several rotations. This is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, this will be the y-axis, then you also have the z-axis, and there can be, many rotations. And those rotations actually act as parameters here. Those rotations here. So for example, you have this theta 1. So theta 1 can be some angle, theta 2 can be some angle. And those are those parameters which can be trained. And by training, I mean that they can be optimized using a classical ML technique. And what you will see that these very in quantum machine learning, these algorithms are very hybrid. That means they include the quantum part, the quantum circuit, which is the variational circuit. But apart from that, from the measurement part till the optimization part, and feeding it back inside the variational circuit again, that whole part is classical. So let me go to the next slide. So this is what I mean. This is the basic architecture, and this is very similar to that of a classical ML. In the classical ML, instead of U of theta is the circuit. It's the variational circuit with some theta parameters, which learns actually, and all the other processes are classical. So after taking measurement, it predicts the labels, and then they are fed into a cost function, which uh, which compares the labels with the original true labels. So 0 and 1, they are compared with. So for example, if the prediction becomes 1, it is compared whether it is truly a dog or not. And then accordingly, the thetas are updated and fed back into the variational circuit again. And this is very similar to classical ML. In classical ML, instead of U of theta, we have some F of theta. So F of theta can be your either a regression model or a classification model. We are considering the case of classification because it's simple. So if we have a classification model for classical ML, the same process happens. Only thing is that we do not have this measurement step. We have the predicted labels, and they are fed into the cost function, and then the result is fed into this optimizer, and finally they are again fed back into the classical ML algorithm. And this step is very similar to a neural network. Neural networks also propagate back, they also have the process of back propagation, where all the results is fed back, and then accordingly the thetas, theta 1, theta 2 are varied. And similarly, what we have here is the quantum neural network, and this is heavily inspired from classical neural network. You can see the only difference is we have an encoder here. In classical, we don't have an encoder, but we need that encoder. Why? Because you cannot feed classical data directly to a quantum computer. You need to convert that into a quantum state. What we do in the encoder is that we convert that into a quantum state, and then those quantum state will be fed into these WT theta 1, that means the weights, and WT theta 2. So basically these act as those layers. So you can consider this as the first hidden layer, you can consider this as the second hidden layer, and so on. If you add more thetas, they act as more hidden layers. And finally, after this process, we take the measurement, and again the same process repeats. The label, cost function, update, which is performed on a classical computer. So quantum machine learning is more about a hybrid. It's a hybrid classical quantum mechanism. And if you see the industries who are working in the space of quantum computing, you will see this phenomena very commonly, that you have this data, you encode that into quantum state, and then you feed it through the variational circuit. So only the variational circuit part is the quantum. Rest all is just classical. So mostly it's classical, but only the small part is quantum. And why this small part is quantum? Because it provides advantages. But to gain advantages for quantum machine learning, again, we are a little bit far from that, because even quantum machine learning, if you want to take advantage of quantum machine learning, really, you need to have a perfect fault tolerant quantum computer. That means your qubits should be very perfect, and they also should have the presence of a quantum memory which can store all your encoded data. So once you have encoded all these quantum states, all these classical data into quantum states, you should have some mechanism to store them as well. So this is very similar to classical ML. You can just make an analogous treatment. So for example, when you are doing a machine learning task, a classical ML task, you need to store your data, right? You store it, you store your data on a hard drive or SSD or somewhere, and then you retrieve that data from there, and then you feed it with the help of any Python function to your classical ML algorithm. So very similar is for quantum also. You need a quantum memory which can retain those quantum states. Those quantum states have been converted into those classical data has been converted into quantum states, and you need to retain them in a quantum memory and then utilize them. This helps in the procedure of making it completely quantum. So for example, now we are talking about hybrid, but there are also techniques where it can be completely quantum, where even the optimization and everything can take place on a quantum computer, but it's very slow. It's not that fast, it's very slow. And also the results which we obtain now, they are not they are like they have a bit of less accuracy, I would say, because of course the quantum computers are not perfect. So that's why mostly we rely on quantum simulators. But as and this is a research problem. As research progresses, we need to find better quantum computers. We need to have better qubits which can retain these quantum states for a long time, and so that we can also perform even taking gradient calculations on a quantum computer itself. So in that way, all the optimization, all the calculation can take place inside the quantum computer as well, just like classical computers. And these are some of the applications of quantum machine learning. So recently, a paper came out for COVID-19 detection. You can find it on archive. I think it's on bioRxiv. If you are unable to find it, please let me know. Get in touch with me. I will provide you that paper. That paper is very nice. It gives you some nice results on COVID-19 detection using quantum computers. So they have relied on these variational quantum algorithm, these quantum neural networks. This is also known as a variational quantum classifier. If you are wondering, this is a variational quantum classifier. And why classifier? Because you are doing classification task, but also you can also do regression task as well. And variational because theta 1 theta 2 are variational, the weights are variational. And quantum because this part is quantum, so variational quantum classifier. And they use those VQC, the variational quantum classifier, to detect COVID-19. And there are also algorithm called variational quantum eigensolver, which has been used. It's more for quantum chemistry, so they have used it for molecule simulation, for new drug discoveries. And this is also a research area in which you can undertake, because quantum computing has it's very new. So now what we are trying to do is that trying to find as much applications as possible without considering the field. So for example, like even if you are from computer science background, still you would like to explore the domain of chemistry well. Why? Because you are going towards quantum computing, and quantum computing has several application and it has limited application, not like classical computing. So that's why you need to have some kind of basic familiarity with some quantum chemistry stuff and like that, so that you can perform research on this direction. And then we have finance, quantum finance, and it has already been predicted by top players in quantum computing that finance is the first application where quantum advantage will be seen in the next 2 to 3 years. And many industries are now, like, many quantum industries are actually closely working with banks, because banks are those financial institutions which perform uh, all these tasks, like, derivatives pricing, then risk management, or analyzing these complex financial investment portfolios, and then determining their distribution over a particular uncertain range, like, with some uncertain parameters. And similarly for optimization as well, to reduce some kind of risk, financial risk, and maximize some financial value, or some like, revenue, expected return or revenue. So I would say that if you would like to, like, research on quantum computing, and like, if you are interested, you can go towards finance, because finance is the one which has, like, in a very short time, within, I think, in the very, like, in the next two years, you will see some quantum algorithms which are being used to have some huge advantages, even if it is little bit, but that will be very advantageous to those banks if they use these quantum computers for these tasks. Of course, there are other tasks also. This list is not comprehensive, but yeah, just to give you an overview how these things are actually applied. And of course, quantum machine learning. So we have already discussed. You have machine learning. You can apply. You are already applying. People are actually already applying variational quantum classifiers to perform classification. So COVID-19 was an example, but there are other example as well. So if you go to the website of PennyLane, which is a quantum machine learning library released by Xanadu, Canadian based quantum computing company. They have this Penny Lane, and there you can search for tutorials. So they have a very nice tutorial on, and I would suggest you to go and look at it. It's on quantum transfer learning. So again, it's inspired from classical transfer learning, and they are using variational circuits, those variational quantum classifier, which I explained to you right now, to perform some classification of insects. So that was an interesting one, which I also taught to the students at Voxen as well, because I found it to be really interesting. And, like, what we can do. Yeah, maybe you will say that, yeah, the accuracy is not good, or maybe, like, we are only doing on toy data or something. But the capabilities which we have currently with the quantum hardware is limited. So mostly we rely on simulators, but there is a lot of research being carried out in simulators as well, to have, like, better optimization and better capacity. So that's another research problem. So in between, I am mentioning all this research problem, but they all have been compiled into a slide as well towards the end. And now we begin with the topic of QNLP, after having some basic background. So for QNLP also, some more background is needed, but I have tried to make this as simple as possible. If you have any more doubts, you can contact me later, and you can, of course, go through the resources. So what we have is, let me explain the term distributional. So basically what we have is that we use qubits or quantum states, to represent the words. The words means, so maybe the word can be hat, and the another word can be black. So you can represent these words live in a vector space. So that's why it's distributional. Distribution means it's distributed in a space. The space is what kind of space? It's a vector space, because we are doing quantum computing, of course, right? So it needs to be vector space. And then compositional. So compositional means the grammar. Grammar is something which is used, like, you know, which is used to combine some parts to create a meaning of a whole, right? Because if you have hat, by that it doesn't make so much sense. We know that, okay, it's a hat, but what kind of hat? Maybe you want to define the color of the hat. So you said black hat. So as soon as you said black hat, now this sentence black hat has a meaning. So that means the black got entangled with hat, right? So that is compositional. So that entanglement which is created when you said black hat has now a different meaning. That's what is called compositional. That means grammar is composing from parts. Whatever the parts were black, another part was hat. You composed those, you combine those parts with the help of the grammar, black hat, because you will not say hat black. That is semantically wrong. So syntax can be, again, you have to look at this. Like you can have the syntax correct, but the semantics wrong. So for example, boy wears clothes. This is a sentence. Okay. Syntax is correct. Semantics is also correct. Semantics is all about meaning of that particular sentence. And syntax is all about grammar, right? So if you have the correct syntax, so boy wears clothes, that's fine. Correct syntax, correct semantics, it makes meaning. But what about boy wears bucket? Why will a boy wear a bucket? That doesn't make any sense, right? So semantics is wrong, but the syntax is correct. Grammar is correct. Boy wears bucket, that's fine. Grammar is correct, but the semantics, the meaning, the deeper meaning behind that, that is wrong. So, you know, this is more, this is about both the semantics and syntax as well. So compositional is syntax. And categorical. So categorical means it is this algorithm, DiscoCAD brand of NLP. This is an algorithm to perform QNLP experiments. It is taken from category theory. Category theory came from abstract branch of mathematics, which is algebraic topology. And category theory is like, you know, that is what enables the QNLP to work. Because in category theory, you have the concepts of compositionality and categorical QM, quantum mechanics, through which, like, you know, with the help of diagrams, you can represent the relationships between various processes. So that is what is explained. So CQM, that is categorical quantum mechanics, DiscoCAD, these two help you to interpret the language as a quantum process. And then as soon as you can get it as a quantum process, you can convert it into a quantum circuit with the help of a graphical tool known as ZX calculus. So Z means the Z gate, which I have shown you, the Z quantum gate, and X means the X quantum gate. So these two are used to form circuits. And of course, you have the variational versions also. That means RX, RZ, rotations around the blocks were customized rotations. So this is a QNLP in a diagram. You ask a question and it replies, you answer, hey, is Chomsky an anarchist? So you gave an article from Wikipedia about Chomsky to this IBM quantum computer in between, and it says yes or no based on the sentences, like, you know, you have from Wikipedia. So that's just QNLP in a diagram. So processing language, processing natural language. Language can be in anything. We are considering English, but other languages is also possible. And then, you know, having some kind of answer. So we will see the classification type, but of course, like if you explore more, and you have the question answering as well. So this is the example which I was giving you. Applying adjective to a noun. So hat is a noun. You denote this hat by this state. So this is the diagrammatic representation of a quantum state. This is no longer now mathematical. These are diagrams and it makes so much sense. Even a beginner can understand what is happening. If you have a hat and as soon as you apply black, this is a process. We represent this as a process. Okay. As soon as you apply, then those two, like, together they form a meaning. So together they form a meaning. So together we apply this bell. Bell is the state which is the basic entanglement state for 2 qubits. So I have shown that diagrammatically here. So you can show diagrammatically the ket bell as this one. So for example, 0 0 ket 0 0 plus ket 1 1 divided by root 2. is a Bell state. So this is the state, how you represent that diagrammatically. So, rather than writing 0, 0 plus 1, 1 divided by root 2 up to normalization, like, you can simply denote them using these cups and caps. So these are known as, this is a cup, this is a cap. And you can actually replace this with a cup because they become entangled. As soon as you say black hat, that sentence has a different meaning rather than only a single word black or a hat. So that means they get entangled immediately. And why entangled is because they both cannot live without each other. That means black hat, when you want to describe the hat with the help of an adjective, you need to put this in the front. Of course, you will not put it here, hat black. That will be semantically wrong. So that's why you will put black hat and then they get entangled because that has a meaning. So therefore, you computed the meaning of this sentence from its parts. And this is the problem which was not solved by classical computers, but you can see that with the help of this DiscoCat framework, you are able to solve it. So now we take a simple example, subject, verb, object. So subject is Steve. Steve is the subject. Hates is the verb because verb is something which is something like act of doing something, that is verb. And Jack is the object because Steve hates Jack. So this verb is being applied on Jack. So that's why it's an object and Steve is the subject. And again, you can form them diagrammatically like this. These are the individual diagrams. And again, you can see the Steve hates Jack. They must have some kind of entanglement in between. So how they have entangled like this, Steve hates Jack and you go to hates Jack. These are entangled together and you get an output. So this black wire represents the higher dimensional verb spaces. So you may have, lot of verbs, not only hates, but you can have something else also. They maybe wears or loves or something. So so they live in a higher dimensional space, but with the help of ZX calculus and some internal wiring mechanisms, we have been able to reduce the dimensions. So let me show you. First, this is the DiscoCat algorithm, which I have shown you before. So you represent these words as shown here. So this is Steve hates Jack's example, simple example. You build the wire diagram representing the grammar. So this is essentially the grammar. This lower part is the compositionality, and this upper part, these states which live in a vector space, is the distributional. And the framework which combines them is categorical. That means category theory. So that is how the name comes, DiscoCat. And okay, these are just the diagrammatic representation I have shown you before. So, cups you can represent like this, the Bell state, and you can combine them. So you can just replace these with these ones, these Bell states. So we are just replacing them. So we replace them and we apply this quantum process to the meaning of the parts. So meaning of the parts mean those Steve, okay, Steve is one part, hates is another part, individual parts, okay. Then you combine them together to form a meaning of the whole. Meaning of the whole means meaning of the sentence. Steve hates Jack. And finally, when we do that, once we have the process, and this is the thing which I was talking about, and you can find more about this wiring system in the reference, what kind of wiring system we use. We take the help of ZX calculus to convert these diagrams into quantum circuits. So let me show you a simple diagram. So these these are known as spiders, these circular blocks which you see here, these are known as spiders, and the white spider is called called as the Z spider. That means the Z quantum gate, which I have explained to you before, and this gray one is the X one. So you combine both of them together to form a C naught gate. And for representing arbitrary verbs, you can have different values. You can have a variational one. So this is a variational circuit. Of course, there are steps in between. I have not covered them. Reason because due to the time constraints, but there are a lot of steps in between from going from here to here. So this is the ultimate circuit of this one. Steve hates Jack, which is completely composed of those Z and X spiders and parameterize. So this is basically RZ alpha and this is RX beta. So you can recall this like, you know, from the variational circuit one, which I've explained. That's why the variational circuit was explained. So this one's Rx theta 1, Ry theta 2. These were the parameters, right? So here we have those kinds of parameters in this parameterized circuit. Um, yeah, here. And only composed of Z and X along with some C naughts, because C naughts is used to create entanglements. That's why C naught is that is why C naught is essential. And now once we get a parameterized circuit, we can feed any of these sentences into this circuit to perform QNLP. And therefore, to do that, we have this toolkit, as I explained before. This is the new toolkit released by Cambridge Quantum. And on a high level, it converts any sentence into a quantum circuit based on a compositional model. So there are various types of compositional model. I have provided the paper in the references. You can go through and, like, you know, if you want me to share the slides, I will share it with Anurag. Anurag is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anurag. So I will share the slides. You can share with the participants. They will find it useful. I have all the references mentioned as well. So basically what Lambek does is, like, you know, it's very simple. It parses your sentence. It builds a syntax tree out of that. It encodes that. That means converts that into a string diagram. The string diagram is this diagram. This one, Steve hates Jack. This is a string diagram basically. So it converts that tree into this string diagram, and it uses some rewriting rules, like, you know, to simplify the diagram so that it can be, like, you know, made into a simpler quantum circuit. If you do not do rewriting, then it becomes very difficult to convert into a simplified quantum circuit. And if you want to run it on a quantum hardware, of course you convert to a quantum circuit. And if you want to run it on a classical computer, you can convert it to a tensor network. All the functionality is available inbuilt inside Lambek, and then you optimize them and then you get your result. And these are some of the features of Lambek. It's modular. There are independent modules which you can use independently. They are not dependent on each other too much. They can be used, like, you know, all alone, which provides you flexibility. It's open source. You can go to GitHub right now. You can type Lambek, Lambeq. Okay, it's the Lambek is you know, it's like giving credit to the great scientist Joachim Lambek, who worked on linguistics and computer science. And this is extensive. So they have object oriented design. It's high level. It's on Python language, and it provides you interoperability. So there is simple communication with other packages. So you can use this toolkit in near future with other packages. So of course this has been released recently. So, like, you know, more work needs to be put in. And that's also a nice area of exploration for the QNLP. So this is the working of Lambek, and this is the structure which is there and followed in the code as well. The code which I'm going to show you briefly, the demo. So based on a selected compositional model. So in our case, we, let us say we have the disco cat model. That's the compositional model we have. Okay, that model. A sentence is parsed using parser, and the parser which we currently use is the depth CCG parser. So CCG means combinatory categorical grammar. Okay, so that parser is, like, you know, it's readily available. That's why the Lambek uses this functionality. And what we do is then this parser creates a syntax tree, and from the parse tree it is converted into a string diagram, the diagram which I showed you. Steve hates Jacks and cups below, and the wire coming out, that diagram. And then it is simplified using rewrite rules to remove any redundancies, and it makes it compatible for quantum computation. And finally, the string diagram is converted into a circuit, the circuit like this, something like this. using the based on a choice of AND-SAT. So for example, this one which I have shown you, this is a manual conversion into quantum circuit. The steps are there in that paper in the reference, and I will show you. I will show you for completion. And but what we are going to use here for Lambic is actually we will be using particular predefined ansatz. Of course, there are more ansatz which are coming to Lambic. It's very new. Currently, work is being done on Lambic to include more parameterization, more choices of ansatz for quantum and classical both, and as well as variety of compositional models also. So that's the thing. And once you have the ansatz, then of course, once you have the circuit ready, then you can do anything with that, right? You can run it on a quantum computer. So main thing is to get the circuit, and that's what Lambic does, converts this sentence into circuit. And before going into the demo, I just want to quickly mention the opportunities for research scholars so in this field. So first few are for quantum hardware, like till this one, discovery of new qubit technologies. So currently we have those quantum hardware, which I told you. We have superconducting qubits, we have photonic qubits, we have ion traps also, and others as well. But still researchers are working on, like, this is towards quantum hardware. If you have interest towards hardware, you can go in this direction in, like, discovering new qubit technologies. And maybe like also another research direction is to improve qubit fidelity, or like the quantum hardware design, so making the design optimized and efficient. And there is a nice toolkit for this, which is the Qiskit Metal. Qiskit Metal is open source, and you can actually design your own superconducting qubits, and there are actually documentation and tutorials available on the Qiskit Metal website, which gives you demo of how you can design a 5 qubit quantum computer. It also gives you a demo of a real quantum computer which has been deployed by IBM in Japan. I think it was 5 qubit only. Yeah, I think it was 5 qubit. You can check the documentation that they have given the design, which they have designed using Qiskit Metal, and they deployed it on a real hardware in a in Japan as a real quantum hardware, superconducting. So of course, check Qiskit Metal out for quantum hardware research. It's really nice. And you can also work on quantum error correction. This is very important because currently we have the quantum computers, the qubits are fragile, and therefore they require error correction continuously. So that's why you can also go towards the research direction on quantum error correction algorithms. Then quantum memory, I have already mentioned you this QRAM. So if you have access to something like QRAM, then quantum machine learning can really provide some nice speed up compared to classical ones. It has already started to work on simulators, but simulators are limited. We need to have a very nice quantum hardware with lots of qubits to really store millions of data, and then have some efficient accuracy or output from that data. If we have everything quantum, not so much hybrid. And towards the software, this one I mentioned to you, I think, development of classical quantum simulators. So simulators which provides interoperability between the quantum hardware and classical hardware, also which provides, like, more capacity. So, like, more qubits for experimentation, unless, like, the quantum hardware develops. So for now, we are relying on this. And also there is a need for, like, high level programming languages. So Silk is a language, as you know. The book which I wrote, it was on a high level programming language, Silk. And that that gives you nice syntax and semantics for coding quantum computers. Of course, Silk is very new. It's currently not supported in any cloud platform or quantum hardware, but we hope that it will soon have its own place, and you can use Silk to program real quantum hardware very soon. And another research direction is to explore various industry applications of quantum computing, or maybe develop algorithms, quantum algorithms for the existing application which I showed you. So machine learning, I have shown you, they utilize variation algorithms, but also finance also utilizes variation algorithms, plus other algorithms such as quantum amplitude estimation. So that's another algorithm which is used heavily in finance for performing Monte Carlo and stuff. And you can also check out research from Cambridge Quantum. Recently, they gave a paper on quantum Monte Carlo techniques, and if that technique, like whenever it gets success, it can provide lot of advantage to the field of quantum finance. So these are some directions, and now it's time for the short demo. So this is the demo, and I will share this notebook with Anurag, and he will share with you all. So this is meaning classification with Lambek. So we have these data. So let me show you trained data. If you see, and we have provided them labels. So there's a binary classification problem basically. So you can see this data: skillful man prepares sauce, skillful man bakes dinner, woman cooks tasty meal, man prepares meal. So these belong to the same category. What is that? Food. The category is food. But this one, skillful woman debugs program, person runs useful application, person runs program. So this is more related to IT, information technology. So we have this data set which is divided into food and IT. Okay, and these sentences have the similar kind of meaning. And the job of this quantum task is to, like, find this, classify these meanings accordingly, like one and zeros correctly after training. That's the job. So that is why we call meaning classification, which I told you, how we are composing a meaning of a sentence from its parts. So this is just an example. And so this is the data set. You can go through it. I have given the links. This is based on this Lambic toolkit. And we have total 130 sentences. 70 is in the training set, 30 and 30 on the test and development set. Development means validation set. And they are on food or IT, and this is a binary meaning classification problem. So what we do is that I have ran this, so I will not run it again. Actually, the training of the sentences, because there are a lot of sentences, even though this is an intermediate level, but still the training takes around 30 to 40 minutes. So that's a long time. So that's why I have already ran it. You can install these dependencies, Lambic, then Lambic deep CCG. So this is the parser actually, which will convert your sentence into that syntax tree. And then it can be further processed for string diagrams. And after you install this CCG, you need to restart the runtime to use those. We also install PyTicket, because PyTicket is the Python-based library provided by Cambridge Quantum, which is hardware agnostic, and it has interoperability with Qiskit. So we can use the backend, the simulator backend of Qiskit to run our quantum circuit. And noisy opt, so that is for the optimizer. So we use an optimizer SPSA. Here I am just going to briefly go through. Just what we do is very simple. We just store these labels and data uh, from from the trained data. So basically these data sets, MC train data, MC dev data, MC test data, we store them. After storing them, we call our parser so that they can be converted into string diagrams. So sentence to diagrams. See, it's very simple. So it converts sentence to that. It's the same process which I have explained to you in slides. Then what we do some rewriting. So this is the function to rewrite. And after rewriting, this is an example. So skillful man prepares sauce. So it removes all those cups. So this is, we remove cups for faster execution. And after rewriting this, we now convert this into a quantum circuit, and we use the IQP AND-SAT. So rather than doing it manually, we have a general circuit, a general variational circuit, which is the IQP AND-SAT, which consists of RX and RZ gate, you can see. And we also have controlled RZ, like, controlled rotations gate are also there's, like I showed you a controlled Z gate, right? But controlled rotation Z is also there, controlled rotation X is also there, everything is there. And it is of course based on ZX calculus. All the stuff is done based on ZX calculus. So we convert this into a circuit, and once we get the circuit, we configure the backend. We define our simulator in this line. So this is, we define the AER simulator. So AER is like, AER's a backend, like you can consider is to be a emulation of a perfect quantum hardware, or I should say it's like, an imagination of a perfect quantum hardware, how a perfect quantum hardware can, like, give you some nice results. So it's like that kind of. And we configure the backend. We define some function for predictions and normalization, and this is the training function. And after the training is performed, we can get some nice accuracy of 80%. You can see that, like, we are getting some nice accuracy of 80%. And this is all, like, all this is quantum. And you can see, like, from the graph it is visible, like the how the loss is decreasing, and for both the sets, the training and development, the validation set, and how the accuracy increases slowly with each iteration. So this is a small demo. I will share this with Anurag, and, like, you can all have a look. You can find it on the Lambic also. And these are the resources which I was talking about. So for a general nice introduction to QNLP, you can go through this paper by Bob Cook on foundations for near-term QNLP. This is what we have used for making these slides and Lambic. So we have utilized these two. And this paper covers the basic compositionality. So I have these papers open and I can show you. So this is like, this gives you some basics of ZX calculus, how you can form circuits. And, like, you have C naught. So I see a question. Let me see. Yes, Virendra, I just mentioned I will share the notebook with Anurag, and he will share with you all. I will also share the slides, so you can go through the slides as well. Okay, so, like, these are the steps which I have not shown you in slides. So, like, they provide you the full step of how you can. Yeah, you're welcome, Virendra. You're welcome. So, it shows you, like, how you can model verbs, how you can model nouns, and the circuit which is there is like, this alpha, beta, gamma is the arbitrary unitary in terms of ZX calculus. So this is like, the RZ alpha, this is RX beta, again, this is RZ gamma. And the circuit which I showed you is this one. So so you can see there are lots of steps in between, which I have not shown you. Of course, you require some more background, and it's not possible to cover everything in 1 hour. But I just try to give you a basic intuition of how you can convert a sentence manually with this, and how, like, the Lambic is using a predefined ansatz, which is much more easier, I would say, because converting each sentence into a circuit is a headache, right? There are so many variety of sentences. You cannot have, like, thousands of quantum circuits for each of those 1,000 sentences. So it's better to have a general ansatz, which is this IQP ansatz, which makes your life much more easier. And it can, like, it can feed all those sentences and provide you nice results. So yeah, please consider checking out this paper. It's really nice. It shows you all the process, and it's a very nice introduction to QNLP. And then this is the recent paper for Lambic. And you can, this actually describes the process of Lambic, how it works. It gives you some basic background, and, like, how these string diagrams are converted. And, like, it gives you the categorical framework, also the main framework, which is the pre-group grammar, and the CCG parser as well. So this is the detailed architecture of Lambic. We have used IQP ansatz. So if you see here, we have used this one. So yeah, please do check it out. And these are the basic types of compositionality, which I think will be included sooner into Lambek. So as I told you, based on composition model, you can have some like string diagram conversion and all those stuff. So this is what it is. So this paper gives you some basic compositional types which will be implemented in Lambek, and yeah, like you will have greater flexibility in your QNLP models. So yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for attending. It's really nice to share all these latest research with you all, which is going on, and it's really exciting field. And the wonderful thing is that we can run like all these language model into a real quantum hardware which came out of abstract mathematical concepts. So earlier we used to think that abstract maths doesn't have any application, but it does has in terms of category theory, it does has. So like so now even abstract maths becomes wonderful and interesting. So no more like scary symbols of maths and scary definition. You can just learn the basic definition and basic maths, and like you can implement them on software packages. And of course there are lots of software packages for functional programming and calculating with categories, such as uh, the package you have a package in Julia language, which is CATLAB. You have the package DiscoPy in Python, which is used for computation with monoidal categories. So all these diagrams which you saw, they are all computation with monoidal categories and so on. So that's how the applied category is working. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Anurag, please go ahead.
thank you, Sanjoy, for such enriching and insightful session on quantum computers. As you all know, that this field is a ever-growing field, has a lot of future. So now I will open up for a short Q&A session. So if any one of you have any questions, you can go ahead. Okay, so I'll start with my question. Like,
Mhm.
what are the advantages of quantum computers when it comes in comparison to like supercomputers that are used like in many applications, like for simulations and everything? And like, what are the advantages in terms of efficiency and speed?
Yeah, it's a nice question. I do not know the exact figures, Anurag. Okay, that's a bit difficult to describe, but I quantum computers are of course better than supercomputers, because the supercomputers which you use for simulation right now, you have like large cluster of all these computers which form these supercomputers, and you are basically using classical principles. And the one which I told you about quantum utilizes the principle of superposition, so it's inherently parallel. So you can encode a lot of data in a small number of qubits. So that is the advantages. Quantum gives you an exponential advantage over the classical. So where you are requiring this large room of supercomputer, maybe you can replace that with a one small quantum computer in near future, and that can all do the work much more better and efficient than a supercomputer. That's the power of quantum computer. It provides you that exponential speed of in terms of qubits.
Yeah, and like in applications like computational fluid dynamics also, where
Yeah,
we have
yeah,
simulations like linear algebra and everything.
yeah. Of
So
course, you will get
can we see a
advantage. Mhm.
replacement for quantum computers there also, right?
Yeah, of course, you can use for linear algebra, you can use for for financial application, you can use for Monte Carlo stuff, which I described you before, which is most of the simulation related stuff. Chemical simulation, chemical simulation requires hundreds of qubits. So if we have a perfect quantum hardware which has thousands of qubits, and even hundreds of them are really really good, we can actually analyze complex chemical molecule. And not only that, even quantum computers can also be used for weather forecasting. So climate, it's in climate, it's a complex phenomena. It has so many variables, so many uncertainties, and quantum computers can help there as well. Currently supercomputers we are using for climate prediction and everything, but yeah, quantum computers can replace them and provide much more better efficiency as soon as the qubits become perfect.
Okay, and what are the prerequisites like in terms of any programming language or something to
Hmm.
start with quantum computers? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question actually. So this is currently in the exploration phase. So mostly now I would say, as a Qiskit advocate, I would prefer Qiskit. But yeah, but I have also written book on Silk. So Qiskit is a low level language. It allows you to program circuit, but also Qiskit also has higher level packages as well, which are used for applications. So you can participate in now quantum challenge, which is which will be starting from 27, and that will be covering various applications of Qiskit. So it will be a hybrid of high level stuff plus low level circuit stuff. And the language Silk, which I described you, that's a high level language. So I would say if you have fundamentals of low level and high level clear at this point, it will be nice actually for the near future, because mostly now we are all working on low level, making quantum circuit and then running on hardware and something.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
Python is the choice. If you are talking about programming language, this is about the package. Qiskit, there's about the quantum package, but you can go with Python and Julia.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I think we can look forward in future to have a event on Silk programming workshop or something from you for
Yeah,
so
yeah, sure, definitely. Even I learned Silk very late. Okay, I can say you my story. I didn't knew anything about Silk. Fact publishers contacted me suddenly and they said that, okay, do you want to become author or something? And it was always my wish to write a book, have a experience or have some experience of writing a book. So they offered me this, and this was a new language, but since it was quantum computing and I already knew quantum computing, but I was not familiar with this language, so I thought, okay, I will learn eventually. So my co-author, Thomas Cambier, he helped me a lot in this. Like whenever I used to have any doubts regarding syntax or something, he helped me learn Silk. So yeah, all credit goes to him.
yeah, so thank you, Sanjoy, for this wonderful and insightful session. Yeah, I'm
You're
sure
welcome.
that
Thank you so
this
much.
field of
Mm.
quantum computing has a very bright future in years to come, and our research scholars have enjoyed. Yeah, I think someone has a question. Vishnu, you
Yeah,
can go ahead.
yeah, please go ahead.
Vishnu, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was just saying it was a nice session.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Vishnu. It really makes my day, when I hear these. And yeah, I try my best to keep it as simple, even though there are a lot of mathematical theory involved behind QNLP. But, with the help of diagrams, because it's also all diagrammatic, the maths is all diagrammatic, but I try to, keep it as simple as possible with the background in mind. So just, some basic intro to quantum, then some basic intro to variational, then how you use it in QNLP. And not only QNLP is a research field, rather I would also like to share quantum image processing is also a nice research field. So those who are very much passionate about computer vision related stuff, There are some nice tutorials available on Qiskit textbook. You can check it out. And people are doing quantum image processing stuff. So for example, one tutorial is based on quantum edge detection, where they are using that Hadamard gate which I showed you. They are using that to perform edge detection, and they are making a edge detecting quantum circuit in that tutorial. So that's really wonderful. And of course, image classification tasks are towards QML. But if you want to do some these kinds of stuff like image processing stuff, even that is also in a active area of research apart from NLP, apart from language. So language, this is very new. But yeah, image processing has been done for some time, and you will find resources and materials for that. And QML is of course a research direction. Quantum hardware, I mentioned you, and quantum software. And another direction is not research, I would say, but from the industry point of view. If you all get yourself familiar with the concepts of productionizing machine learning systems, so basically ML operations, ML ops, which combines DevOps and machine learning, that will be useful for quantum, because I have seen many industries now. If you would like to get a job after your master's research or something, and if you have these skills performing DevOps based thing for quantum products, that will be really nice. So if you have familiarity with ML ops, those are all transferable skills to the quantum ops. Thank you, LJ. Thank you so much for your kind words. So yeah, so maybe you can look into this field also. According to the industry trend, what I've seen, they are now developing products, or maybe product as a service or software as a service, and they are using those same DevOps tools to productionize them on cloud, maybe AWS or Azure or GCP, anything, any cloud platform. So concepts remain the same. Only we are using hybrid currently, but concepts are all same. You will see that much of the pattern of this QML and this quantum is from inspired from ML only, and the tools are already existent. So you just need to use them for deploying any quantum product or something. So yeah, that is what I wanted to share. That's some industry perspective what you can work. And yeah, thank you so much. You're welcome, Sarvesh. Thank you.
Any other questions?
If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. And if you are not able to not get any question, that's perfectly fine. Let me share my email address so that you can contact anytime. I will be happy to uh, help you. So that's my email address.
So yeah, thank you so much, Srinjoy, for this lovely session.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so
we are
much.
really looking forward for many collaborations with you in future.
Yeah,
Wait
of
in
course, I will
another
be really happy.
workshop
Yeah,
or something. So with this, I think we can end this session. Thank you so much,
all
everyone,
right.
for
Thank you.
joining
Thank
this
you so
session.
much, everyone. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
all for
thank you.
inviting me, and thank you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.